Tonight we are in the mountains of southern Arizona, and we are looking for Mastigoproctus tohono. This is a species of Vinegaroon, and it's perhaps one of the most unique species of arachnids that can be found in Arizona. We certainly are not in the best place to find them, but locating just a few should be doable. Before we start this video, I want to show you something that I think is fairly cool. These western rhinoceros beetles. These are known scientifically as Xyloryctes thestalus, and I found these four by attracting them to a sheet with a light. These are found in the Four Corner states, Mexico, and part of Central America, and they're closely associated with mountains. As is the case with many large beetles that are found in the drier parts of the western United States, these are associated with the monsoon season. Here in Arizona, they can be seen from July through September, but a few of them may remain active in October. 3 of the ones that we have here are females, and 1 of them is a male. And as usual, it's the male that bears the horn on his head and has that crest on his thorax as well. In contrast, of course, the females don't have a horn, but also their thorax is smoothed over. This means that the females of this species are quite similar to the females of ox beetles that are also found in this region, but there are a few ways to tell them apart. So on these western rhinoceros beetles, you'll notice that the elytra have striations or grooves. Ox beetles do not have those. And also these females don't have much pitting in their thorax, and as a result, the thorax is quite shiny. Meanwhile, the thorax of a female ox beetle does have quite a few pits in it. We have our first Vinegaroon down here. Let's see if I can scoop it up without it getting too upset with me. And there you have it. This one is an adult, and it looks to be a male. These are extreme generalists when it comes to the arthropods that they feed on. They feed on certain groups that are not very popular at all among other arachnids. Some examples of this are darkling beetles and ants. They even feed on insects that have their own chemical defense, such as blister beetles and bombardier beetles. And they feed on stinging arthropods as well, including small scorpions and wasps. And they are also cannibalistic. Of course, Vinegaroons are known for having a chemical defense, which is why they have that name. But during one study conducted on Vinegaroon feeding behavior, this species was once documented regurgitating a sticky liquid onto its prey. The prey in question was a velvet ant, and this liquid that was ejected by the Vinegaroon killed it. It should be noted that Vinegaroons are not venomous and lack venom glands in their chelicerae, and reports of similar occurrences since this study have not been reproduced. This is a Dipodomys merriami, and I'm going to scoop it up off camera with 2 hands, because if I try to scoop it up with 1 hand here, it might get startled and fall over. This is Merriam's kangaroo rat, and these are widely distributed through the American Southwest and Mexico. This is a species that does not need to drink water to survive. Rather, they extract all of the water that they need through their food, and they're almost exclusively granivorous. This means that their access to water is limited, and to conserve as much water as possible, they leave behind very little moisture in their droppings. In fact, their droppings may contain as little as 1/6 the water content of non-desert dwelling rodents. And these aspects of its ecology are found in other Dipodomys species as well. You might have heard of or seen footage of kangaroo rats kicking the heads of rattlesnakes to escape them. This is a maneuver that has been documented in the Merriam's kangaroo rat, the species that we have right here. And also, fun fact, this was the first ever rodent species that I ever caught. And I think that to date, it's also the species of rodent that I've caught the most times. You can see that there's a small scorpion on this rock surface. This is a Gertschius agilis. Let me see if I can take it down before it gets away. Got it. Not a very large species at all, as you can tell. And this one is a female. You can see that it has that glossy appearance. This is as opposed to the males, which look matte. Also, the males that I've encountered are consistently and noticeably smaller than the females. This is one of the more obscure scorpions that can be seen in Arizona. It's only known from a handful of localities in the south, from near the border, but also the bordering corner of New Mexico, as well as Mexico, of course. It's the only species of Gertschius that can be found in the United States. And this isn't saying all that much, considering that this genus is ditypic. but otherwise the most similar scorpions to these that can be found in Arizona are the ones in the genus Vejovis, which are far more widespread and speciose. These appear to have a preference for rocky microhabitats, such as outcrops, cliffsides, and cuts, and in those microhabitats, it seems that they can be fairly common. And the specific epithet agilis means agile, as you would expect, and they are indeed quite speedy. Here on the branch of this mesquite, we have a Syssphinx hubbardi, or Hubbard's silkmoth caterpillar, and there's also another one over here. This one is slightly smaller. This is a species that I've done a video on already, so if you want to go see that, I will put a link in the description. But one thing that I didn't show in that video is that these caterpillars fluoresce under ultraviolet light. This is not too uncommon in caterpillars, but I've noticed that these ones are especially bright. And you will notice that it's not just the entire caterpillar that is fluorescing, but rather it's the more sclerotized bits on the cuticle. What I mean by that is the little hard bumps that you see scattered along the body are what's fluorescing under ultraviolet light. And as is the case with many animals, especially arthropods, that fluoresce like this, it's not really well understood why. We have a Micruroides euryxanthus just cruising along here. I'm going to scoop it up with a stick. I did not bring my snake hook with me. And there you have it, the famous Arizona coral snake. This is the only coral snake species that is found in the western United States. And it's also quite special in the way that it's the only member of its genus. What's unique about this is that it's the only monotypic coral snake genus and the only monotypic elapid in the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, there are a dozen in the Eastern Hemisphere. These snakes can be relatively common at low elevations, especially where Palo Verde and saguaro cacti are well populated, but they aren't as easy to come across once you start to see things like cedars and oaks, which are present where we are right now. And their upper elevational limit is a little bit less than 2,000 meters. I'm not going to distress the snake that we have here, but I do want to point out that when Arizona coral snakes feel threatened, they will often coil up and start farting. This is called cloacal popping, and it's surprisingly loud, and apparently smells quite foul. And coincidentally, the only other snake known to do this can also be found in this region of Arizona. Previously on this channel, I've shown a snake from the genus Rhina, which are commonly known as thread snakes, and those are one of the main prey species for these coral snakes. Okay, we have our second Mastigoproctus Tohono down here on the ground. Let's see if I can get away with picking up a second one without getting sprayed. There you have it. This one looks to be a female, and of course, it's also an adult like the last one. If you were wondering, the name Tohono is a local indigenous word, and it translates to desert. Speaking of deserts, these Vinegaroons occupy quite a range of habitats. They can be found in grasslands, scrublands, forests, and low, dry deserts. And ironically, the more desertic habitats that they're found in are also the ones in which they're the most rare. Even though they can be found in mesic areas, unlike most regional scorpions and Arizona tailless whip scorpions, these have a strong affinity for humid periods. This means that they are more reliant on the heavy rains that are associated with the monsoon period, much like those rhinoceros beetles that I was showing you a moment ago. So because of this, they tend to be much more difficult to see during the spring. Unlike many other Vinegaroons, especially tropical ones which are often nomadic, these Vinegaroons dig burrows. And this isn't just during the cold or dry periods when they may be dormant. Even during their active months, these can be seen poking out of holes in the soil at night, especially beneath rocks. Similar to scorpions, they often ambush their prey from these burrows, especially as smaller instars. This is also why very small individuals are rarely seen active on the surface. Down here in the plants is a caterpillar that I want to show you. This one right here, this is a Battus philenor, otherwise known as the Pipevine Swallowtail Butterfly. These are found in the United States, Mexico, and Central America. The ones that you can see around here are quite red, but elsewhere they're often black with red tips, and there isn't much variation at all besides this. Out here they're almost exclusively supported by the southwestern pipevine. Their connection with this host plant is quite evident. It seems that over 1/3 of the plants that I encounter are harboring these caterpillars. And those plants are in the genus Aristolochia, And these plants contain aristolochic acids, which the caterpillars then sequester in their body, and this is toxic to predators. However, if I understand correctly, these aristolochic acids do not contribute to the set of acids that are found in the osmeterium. That's the yellow organ just behind the head that can be exposed to release a foul smell. And this means that they have two separate modes of chemical defense systems, which is uncommon in the animal kingdom. The adult butterflies are also quite commonly encountered around here. They are black, blue, and orange. Though they are generally common, one of the easier ways to see them is by walking along washes. Wondering if this white-tailed deer has anything interesting to show me. But so far it's just eating grass. Very loud too. It seems to be hypervigilant of something, but whatever it is, it's not me. It's something that it can hear that I cannot hear, I guess. Very curious animal. But I think I'm going to let it go now. Look at this beetle that we have down here. Certainly not the kind that you would just find stumbling about. This one was attracted to my light, and then it fell down. This is a species of dung beetle, and it's quite an obscure one. There's not a whole lot known about them. And it's certainly not a very large species. The one that we have here is only a centimeter across, and this species doesn't get a whole lot bigger than that. These are found in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. That isn't a small range by any means, but it is still a little bit surprising how much they vary. In this far western part of their distribution, where we are right now, the form that we're looking at here is fairly diminutive. More specifically, the one that we have here is a little bit smaller than average. It also has a shorter horn on its head, and those protrusions that you see on the thorax are a little bit reduced. In other regions, they're closer to 1.5 centimeters, and they can have much longer horns. Some of them protrude outwards, and some of them hook back towards the thorax. And those individuals would have bumps on their thorax that extend far more outwards. And from here, it only takes 30 minutes to an hour to get to an area where you can see these beetles that I'm describing. We have a very special amphibian down here on the ground. This is Gastrophrine mazatlanensis. Perhaps my favorite species of frog in Arizona. And I am a little bit surprised that we found it in this habitat, because this little hillside here is fairly dry right now. More commonly, these are known as the Mazatlan narrow-mouthed toad. They're only found in the far south of Arizona and northwestern Mexico. Both the common name and the specific epithet are named after the city of Mazatlan in the south of Sinaloa, which is near the southernmost extent of this species range. These are the only frogs in the family Micruroides that can be found in Arizona. This makes them incredibly easy to identify, as they have a uniquely small head and a skin fold right behind the eyes. The proportions of the head are why they're called narrow-mouthed toads. These are classified as vulnerable by IUCN. They seem to be doing well here, but the quality of the monsoons is deteriorating as the years are passing, so we'll have to see how they're faring in the future. These are not only associated with monsoon rains, but also some of the ephemeral pools that come with it, which is part of the reason that I was a little bit surprised to find it here, although it is totally possible to find them away from pools. Sometimes they can be found living in groups in these pools, but I think it's slightly incidental as opposed to them being social, because these pools are kind of scarce, so they end up congregating there. As you can see, I put some rainwater underneath this rock, and then I nudged the narrow-mouthed toad under it, just in case it was actually lost. Now it'll have an easier time getting to where it needs to be. I already showed you some western rhinoceros beetles at the beginning of this video, but this guy just flew down on the ground next to me, attracted by my flashlight, and I couldn't help but take a look at it. This is another male, but it's larger and darker than the last one that we found. There's also another difference here. You can see that the elytra have quite a bit of damage, and by the looks of it, I'm willing to bet that this occurred when the beetle was emerging from the pupa. Also, the last ones that we were looking at weren't really stridulating because I had already held onto them for a little bit. But if you listen to this one, you can hear that it's quite fussy. Anyway, as you can see, this area is fairly exposed, so I'm just going to move it under this mesquite tree here. We have a mating pair of Phrynotetyx shivavensis down here. As you might be able to guess, the male is the one that is on the side there. The female is the larger one. This is a species that I have previously covered. I believe the last one that I filmed was a male. Considering that so far the monsoons have not been that great, it's good to see some of the more rare insects still persisting. Also, typically when grasshoppers mate, the male and the female are in line with one another, or in other words, the male is directly above the female. But I guess this species is too bulky to mate normally. All right, we have our third and final Mastigoproctus tohono right here. This one appears to be a little bit smaller than the last couple. And as you can see, it is missing the majority of its whip. The Tohono Vinegaroon is the only species of eurypygi in Arizona, and it's one of 3, possibly 4 total found in the United States. Officially, they're known from southern Arizona and Sonora, Mexico, but it's not entirely clear where their eastern limit is. Some of the ones in New Mexico might also be Tohono Vinegaroons, but it gets increasingly ambiguous as you go even further east. Along with other species in their genus, Mastigoproctus, they represent some of the largest eurypygi in the world. The body length of this species can reach about 6 centimeters. This means that the last 2 individuals that we found were fairly close to the limit, and the maximum in the genus Mastigoproctus is only a centimeter or 2 above that. This is quite impressive, considering that there are only a couple of scorpions out of 50 or so in this state that are more massive. And yes, of course, Vinegaroons are not scorpions, but scorpions are arguably their most morphologically similar counterpart here in Arizona. And for some perspective, the average body length of Vinegaroons in general, of which there are almost 130 species, is probably hovering at about 4 centimeters. In this instance, the body length is only including the prosoma and the abdomen. There you go. All right, now that it has all that Cheeto dust on its face, I think it's time that we leave it alone. Down here on the ground is a spider, and it might not be very large, but it's definitely worth taking a look at. This is a spider in the genus Eumidia, a genus of trapdoor spiders. And this Eumidia that we have here is a mature male, and it's wandering around searching for a mate. And this is the reason that its abdomen is a little bit shriveled up. They aren't all that interested in prey during this period. These wandering adult male Eumidia are relatively common around here at this time of the year. The activity periods of many organisms in Arizona are generally tied with the monsoon season, but the surface activity of these spiders is more closely associated with individual rainstorms. They often like to emerge on a night that follows a rainy day, or the night after. And this is not too common among other spiders that are found in this region. Eumidia is quite a widely distributed genus. It's found throughout the Western Hemisphere, but also in many parts of the Eastern Hemisphere. And here in Arizona, we are fairly close to the westernmost edge of their global distribution. As you get further west in the United States, they essentially get replaced by Thevenet's trapdoor spider and the California trapdoor spider, both of which occupy a very similar niche as the spider that we have here, whichever species it may be. Well, those are all of the Mastigoproctus tohono, or Tohono Vinegaroons, that we are going to find tonight. So I'm going to end this video here. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.